I'm Chelsea. I am a vlogger from 112 An Adventure, and I have LASIK done here at Mann Eye with Dr. Tremblay. So we just kind of wanted to go through my experience, and I got a lot of questions, and I tried to answer them as best I could, but he's the expert, so we'll let you do that.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Dr. David Tremblay. I'm with Mann Eye Institute. I'm one of the LASIK surgeons here, and like Chelsea said, so about 4 months ago we did LASIK on both of Chelsea's eyes, and she's been doing great since. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that experience and answer any questions, dispel any myths, that sort of thing.
Yeah, when I started doing this, I started answering most of the questions, and I had someone say, what is LASIK? So I'll let you explain what it actually is.
Sure. So LASIK surgery is intended to correct any kind of what's called refractive error, or essentially a glasses prescription in your eyes. And whereas if you have to wear glasses or contacts after LASIK, theoretically you shouldn't. And the way we do that is we actually reshape the surface of the eye, or the cornea. And so we're taking it from being a certain thickness and roundness to a different shape, and that accommodates for whatever prescription's in your eye. It's a pretty straightforward procedure. It takes about 10 minutes or so. We're going to talk a little bit later about if there's any discomfort or pain, but really it's a very quick and painless process. The recovery's fast. With LASIK, typically by that evening or the next morning you're seeing well enough to drive yourself. Very, very little downtime.
How do you know if you're a good candidate for LASIK?
Right, so it's very important to make sure you are a good candidate before you do LASIK. Before we do LASIK, we have you come into our office and we do some pretty rigorous screening tests. And a lot of that involves imaging of the eye, pictures of the surface of the eye or the cornea, making sure our prescriptions are consistent and stable. A lot of times if you're young or if you've been in contacts for a long time, your prescription tends to change over time. And so we want to check you multiple times at different time points to make sure your prescription is indeed stable.
Yeah, when I walked in and saw all the different machines, I was kind of a little nervous, but it's actually, none of the machines are uncomfortable, and the puff test that you do at the
puff test is not
worse.
done anymore.
Yeah. Well, oh really?
No.
I didn't know that.
Well,
we didn't have to do it for LASIK.
Some offices do it for other purposes, but
yeah,
we haven't done that for
but that was way
15
worse,
years.
The puff test.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They're not bad.
Yeah.
Do you have to do anything special to prepare for the procedure?
No, not at all. In fact, a lot of our patients, if they have an afternoon surgery, actually work in the morning. Yeah, so the only thing really in those cases is makeup can be a little bit of a concern during surgery, and so we really make sure that day gotta go light on the eye makeup, so we don't have to sit there and remove a lot of it. But otherwise, you can work the morning of, you can go about all of your normal activities. There's no restrictions on eating, so you can eat a normal diet, you can work out, pretty much everything.
The number one question I got was, did it hurt?
Mm-hmm.
And it does not hurt at all. You've had it here. You've gotten it done as well.
Right, so I actually had my LASIK done by Dr. Paul Mann, one of our other eye surgeons, about 3 years ago here. And I had no pain. In terms of pain, there's no pain during the surgery. Sometimes people feel some slight pressure, and it's variable.
Yes.
It's only for a few seconds, and I warn you when that's going to happen, so it's really not a surprise, and it's pretty straightforward.
The way that kind of felt for me, and this sounds bad, but it kind of felt like a dull headache right behind the eye for that, I think maybe 5 to 10 seconds.
Right, so it's just
and
a few
then it was
seconds.
over.
Yeah. And I talked you through and I warned you when that was going to happen, right? So it wasn't a surprise or a shock.
No.
And that's it. Afterwards, there's maybe a little bit of slight burning or irritation just for a few moments, but we encourage you to go home and take a nap after, at least close the eyes for a few hours. And once you've woken up from that, there's no pain.
So you kind of touched on it, but what is the recovery and downtime is another big one.
So a lot of times people are actually going to work the following day. I worked the day after my LASIK surgery, so the downtime, it's really just the day of surgery. That day you're going to have a little bit of sedative, so we give you something to take before LASIK, which helps calm your nerves down. And for that reason, you can't drive that day. But the next day afterwards, you can drive yourself around, you can do most of your normal activities. There are some restrictions, like you can't go swimming for a few days, you can't lift heavy weights, you can't do anything too rigorous or strenuous, and definitely no eye rubbing. But other than that, you can pretty much live most of your normal routine.
Yeah, I drove myself the next morning to my 24-hour post-op appointment. So, I mean, I went home, and I think mine was at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Went home, slept, and I woke up at midnight, just woke up, and I couldn't believe that I could read the clock across the room from me. So I saw results like that, which was another question that I got a lot, was how long does it take to see results?
Right. And it depends. A lot of times we're doing big treatments, so if you're very, very nearsighted, you have a lot of astigmatism, sometimes that can take a little bit longer, like a few days as opposed to the next day. But even in those cases, most people are able to drive themselves with great vision. It may not be crystal clear the day after, but it's good enough to get around and function.
my biggest question too was with the whole recovering downtime was how soon can I wear makeup?
Yeah. So
I mean, going to work and stuff.
That's probably the most common question we get. So our official policy is 4 days after LASIK surgery, you can wear eye makeup again. And it's important because it's not the makeup itself that's a problem, it's the removal of the makeup.
Yeah.
And so when you remove makeup, you're putting a lot of pressure on your eyes. We want the flaps to heal before you do that. And so 4 days after, you can start using eye makeup again. And most of our surgeries are performed later in the week, so that gives you the weekend to, be indoors or not be around people if you don't want to have to, go around without makeup on.
What are some of the side effects that people have?
Yeah, so the most common side effect is probably some dryness. Dry eye it's going to happen to everybody temporarily. All right, so at least for the first month or so, you're going to have to use some pretty frequent lubricating drops. And a lot of times it's difficult because you don't feel the dryness. You know you're dry because your vision gets a little bit blurry.
That's how I was. It's
right.
Like it was like.
It doesn't hurt. You don't feel like there's something in your eye like you would if you hadn't had LASIK. But for that reason, you have to use a lot of lubricating drops.
Yeah.
But usually after 1 month or so, you're stopping the drops or you're significantly reducing them. And then other side effects, things like glare at nighttime, halos around lights, starbursts, and things like that. Those are going to happen at first, but after typically a month or so, or sometimes sooner, like about 2 weeks or so, they're drastically reduced to the point where you don't notice them.
I mean, I really didn't have many side effects. I mean, I did have a little dry eye, and then a little bit of the halos, but other than that,
no big deal.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Will I ever need glasses again?
So good question. The answer is yes, and it's not because the LASIK is wearing off, and that's a commonly it's one of those myths about LASIK. When you turn 40, there's a change that occurs in your eye where the lens in the eye becomes dysfunctional, and that's called presbyopia, and that's when most people in their 40s have to start putting reading glasses on. A lot of people think that that's actually the LASIK that's wearing off, or they're having regression of their LASIK. It has nothing to do with the cornea or the LASIK, it's the lens in the eye. And so yes, when you turn 40 or get into your mid-40s, and if you had LASIK, say 10, 15 years before that, you may have to start putting some readers on. The good news is there's additional surgeries or procedures that you can have to help with that, to reduce your dependence or get rid of the reading glasses also. So the vast majority of people that have good quality LASIK don't have to go back into contacts or glasses because of the LASIK changing. Now, there is a small percentage of people, about less than 4 to 5%, where they may need a touch-up down the road at some point, and those are typically the bigger treatments. So if you're really nearsighted, you were wearing Coke bottle glasses before, you had a lot of astigmatism, you may have a chance that you need a treatment or a touch-up in the future.
And you guys have a program where you cover touch-ups if you need
That's right.
If you follow everything, right?
Yeah, so if you go to all your post-op visits, which it's not that hard, it's just 4, then you have a 2-year enhancement policy where if there is a change within 2 years, then we touch it up for free. Chelsea ended up a little better than average, but average is 20/20 perfect vision, so she's just an overachiever. So,
yeah, I made him let me test for 2020
a
couple times.
She did.
I had a lot of people ask, does insurance cover it?
Right, so usually not. There is one rare insurance called VSP Premier, which a lot of the technology companies here in Austin, like Google, Blizzard, Intel, have access to. And so for their employees that have that plan, it does cover, and it covers a pretty significant amount. But every other insurance does not cover LASIK. So it is an elective procedure costing out of pocket. Now, if you can't afford the price of the procedure, we do offer financing. There's different financing options up to 2 years. So if you wanted to come see if you're a candidate for LASIK, do the measurements, make sure your cornea is thick enough that it's regular, then we can do that consultation for free. You can talk to the counselor at that visit and get an idea on pricing. I have a question for you.
Okay.
So can you think of one thing that's been a big change in terms of having LASIK and not having to deal with contacts?
I can think of like 100 things.
Well, what's the most
Actually, though,
impactful?
I know you're going to be mad, but I was bad and I would sleep in contacts.
There's a study that shows that it puts you at 20 times greater risk of having an infection if you sleep in your contacts in one night. And so we have a lot of patients that have had LASIK purely for that reason. They just abuse contacts. They can't get out of them. They just refuse to take them out at nighttime, and they've had issues. So that's one good reason to have LASIK, is to make it safer for your eyes.
Yeah. Another big one has been traveling. So I'm a travel blogger. I'm actually preparing for my Europe trip now. And with contacts, it's just, I've traveled so much and having to do contacts or have prescription glasses if I don't want contacts, and all the stuff that you have to bring with contacts, the bottles of whatever, you have to bring extras, or if you have dailies, it takes up so much room in luggage. And another big one for me was being out on the lake. Last year, before I had LASIK, I was wake surfing and I fell. And I had a contact pop out. And
Yep.
so I had to drive home like half blind
Yeah.
and snorkeling. Like they always burned my eyes. And
Right.
So it's been an absolute life changer, and I tell anyone that will listen to me that you should get LASIK.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, the water thing is my biggest impact also.
Mm-hmm.
So when I noticed it the most was when I went swimming with my kids, and I was able to dive for rings and things underwater for the first time since I was 7 or 8 years old, which was pretty cool, because like you had the experience where your contact falls out. Same thing, when you open your eyes underwater in a pool, the contacts come right out and you can't see anything.
Yeah.
And then without contacts, I was blind. So that was cool, being able to swim with my kids.
I did get. Is it scary?
Well, so it can be scary if you think about it. But the good news is, like I said earlier, we give you something that takes the nerves off, a little bit of a sedative.
Yeah.
And that really works well. It doesn't knock you out to the point where you're, having nausea afterwards or anything like that. But it's just a mild sedative. And so that really helps. But, I mean, it's laser surgery, but I think we do a pretty good job about talking you through everything and making you feel comfortable through the process.
So I was freaking out, if you remember.
Chelsea was pretty nervous.
I get really nervous I just get really anxious with medical things, and I just have to say, like, you guys were great about, calming me down. Then my friend got to come in with me. You never was like, okay, we need to get this, like, I wasn't delaying it.
Right.
You waited till I was ready, and yeah. And honestly, it is scary. It is lasers, but it takes only 10 minutes, and you can kind of sit through anything for 10 minutes. It doesn't hurt, and I mean, it's so worth it.
Yeah, we try to make it a good experience. That's the last thing we want, is to force you to do something you're not ready to do, and so we definitely take our time and make sure you're ready. I'll just say, if you guys want to come in and have a consultation, like I said, it's a free screening. You can look us up online at manneye.com or call us at 1-800-MY-VISION.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.